Hello and welcome back to the channel, where today we have a car that I've wanted to drive for a very long time, the Lexus ISF. In the 2000s, the Germans, with their performance sedans, had been on a roll, and had been since, let's face it, the 1990s. But there was nothing really from Japan that could give them a run for their money. Lexus, up until that point, were just making luxury sedans. They were a separate entity from Toyota. There was the LS430, which had a 4.3 litre aspirated V8. There was a GS300 from the early 90s, which had a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder, the 2JZ actually, although the Toyota Aristo in Japan had a exclusively JDM only twin-turbo 2JZ. There's nothing really to reel the Germans in. But in 2007 there was a little bit of an attitude shift within the Lexus team. The F division was launched, which is basically what AMG is to Mercedes and M is to BMW and RS is to Audi. And along came this, the ISF. Basically they took the normal IS platform that had been around since 2005 and gave it a whole bunch of go fast bits, so much so that wasn't really mechanically similar to the regular car at all. Brand new engine, co-developed alongside Yamaha, known as the 2UR GSE engine. Yamaha Music actually tuned the headers purely for acoustic enjoyment, more on that later. And it was paired to a first of its kind 8-speed auto, the first commercially used in any road-going car. Suspension-wise, entirely different, brand new springs, dampers, control arms, subframe mounts, bushes, anti-sway bars, and the car actually sits 1 inch lower than the regular IS platform. Brakes were looked after by none other than Brembo, with 6-piston 360mm front rotors and 2-piston 340mm rear rotors. Now getting into the Lexus, let's just move the seat back. Electronic, by the way. The interior, yeah, really logical, really sensible, good build quality, no squeaks and rattles, exactly as you'd expect from Lexus. The dials are beautiful, very easy to read, and nice lighting. Coming over this way, all of this is in Japanese because it's a Japanese imported model. No idea how it bypassed Australia's 25-year import law. That's an absolute mystery, but here it is. I've read somewhere in the motoring press that they don't really like this clock. It looks a bit old and clunky, but I actually quite like it. It's such a Toyota thing. Even their new Land Cruisers have exactly the same clock. It's kind of funny. But otherwise, very nicely put together interior, easy to use, nice driving position. Yeah, it's good. As you may have noticed, this particular car has aftermarket headlights, wheels, and also an exhaust, but otherwise mechanically is completely standard. Well, driving the ISF, first of all, most controversial thing about the car, the gearbox. I find it to be actually very good. Like I said earlier, the first 8-speed in any road car. But in comfort mode, I'll talk more about the gearbox in a spirited context a bit later, but for now, downshifts, they're easy, in quick, and it changes back up gears once again, nice and easily. So no real complaints with the gearbox. I find it to be really smooth and yeah, quite effortless. The ride is firm, there's no getting around that, but at speed, like most cars, at speed it does settle, and it is a pretty comfortable highway cruiser, but around town, I don't normally drive cars in town environments because I like getting them out onto roads where we can have a bit more fun, but yeah, firm, but not uncomfortable at speed. Road noise, not really any cabin intrusion at all actually. It's definitely what you'd expect from the luxurious reputation that Lexus have always had prior to the arrival of this model. Which is important because in a way it's staying with its roots. Sounds, the engine note is just phenomenal. I haven't really driven anything else quite like it. Yeah, you kind of have to really hear it in person to appreciate it. There's not a lot of power and torque. Peak power, which is about 420 horsepower, comes in at about 6,500 RPM. Torque, 503 Newton meters, comes in at about 5,000 RPM. And down low in the rev range, there isn't a lot, so you really have to be on the throttle hard and sort of wait until the high RPMs come in before you really start to feel the horsepower. And it's beautifully, in typical naturally aspirated form, beautifully linear all the way up until the rev limiter. Now when this car was brand new, I was only 6 years old, but a couple of years later, I would have been around 8, my father's friend bought one, and it was an ultrasonic blue, so quite a rare colour. And I remember being 8 years old, being in the passenger seat of that thing. And I still remember to this day, I don't remember much else about it, but I remember the sound. It too had a custom exhaust. And ever since then, I've wanted to hear that again. And here I am as a early 20s something, being able to relive that. So it's a good day. Brakes, yeah, like I said before, 6-piston, big Brembo stoppers, very faithful and confidence inspiring. Perfect balance between nice and sensitive, but not over servoed, and definitely easy to modulate. First thing that really surprises me, oh, that engine note's just so good, is this car weighs just under 1.7 tonne, but there is no way at all you notice that the body control, just phenomenal, completely flat, no real hint of body roll, and the turn-in, razor sharp turn-in. It's an electric rack, so there's not a lot of feedback, but that's just the way the world's going, so you kind of have to embrace that. But the front end feels super dialed in and very, very keen to turn. It kind of boggles the mind a little bit about how pointy and darty this feels. Balance, very, very good. You feel that beautiful rear wheel drive push when you throttle out of corners. And speaking of, because it has this nice linear power delivery, there's not this massive surge of low down torque that breaks the rear tyres loose. So you can get quite greedy with the throttle when you're coming out of the corner, and it feels planted and secure. Now this car, being a 2008 model, it doesn't have a limited slip diff. That came in 2010, where Lexus finally added a Torsen limited slip, so it'd be interesting to see how that feels. But honestly, it's not a deal breaker. It sounds it in theory, but it's predictable. It's still tail happy when you really want it to be, when you're really aggressive with the throttle inputs. But otherwise, it's a pretty user-friendly platform in that sense. Also, in 2012 and 2013, they added a couple of suspension tweaks, that being slightly firmer rear spring rates, but slightly softer front spring rates. Bit of a more demanding section of road here, quite torn up. It is firm, like I said, but the car's staying on track nicely. Not over rebounding, not getting skatey, and hiding its mass very well. Another relatively comedic thing I've just discovered is the readout when it gives you warnings and alerts is in Japanese. So if the car's beeping at you and it's saying something on the gauge cluster, I've got no idea what it's saying. Now Now the gearbox, when you're asking a little bit more from it, good. Sure, I am going to be that guy. I do wish this had a manual. I think that would just complete the experience perfectly. That's something that the M3 offered and the RS4. But it changes gears quickly, it downshifts quickly, the blips are nicely rev matched. It's hard to actually believe that this is a first gen gearbox. It feels good. If you're in the market for one of these cars, I don't think it's going to disappoint you. And this is what life's about. Us car guys get it. We're in an interesting car. Well, by interesting, I mean 420 horsepower V8 on a nice bit of road on a beautiful day. Beautiful scenery, cows up there, nice trees. It's just everything comes together. Car guys get it. While we were filming, this man in a very nice GS 430 came to say hi. See how cars bring people together. Now, where does this car sit on the market? Well, second-hand examples in Australia, at least for the low 100s of thousands of kilometres, you're looking at about 40 grand. Lower mileage examples go up a little bit higher to about, 50, up to even $60,000. But what I find interesting is the equivalents, so the W204 C63 AMGs and the E90 M5s. Keep in mind the E90s were the 4 doors, E92s were the 2 doors. For the same sort of kilometres, around the same price range, RS4s, the B7s, are a little bit cheaper. And why would you own one of these over one of the German competitors? Well, the sound, number one, and reliability wise, it is at the end of the day a manufacturer owned by Toyota. I've heard great things about the driveline of the AMGs, so I don't think they're necessarily that much of a financial risk. But at least with something like this, especially on the electronic side of things, you know that as long as it's been looked after, it's not going to have any issues. It may not be quite as dialed in as an M3, but honestly, from what I've experienced today, I don't find I want this car to do anything more. The front end, razor sharp. Not a lot of feel, but excellent turn in. The body control and weight control, superb. Suspension, bit jiggly when you're pushing on, but still feels pretty compliant and pretty settled. It doesn't over rebound and get nervous. It works as a package. It doesn't feel like the engine is necessarily the star of the show. The car has a lot of other attributes going for it. And it's a car that you can be sedated. You don't have to be driving at 10 tenths all the time. It is a Lexus after all. And also the backstory of how this car was manufactured. I can't quite remember his name. I've had a mental blank, so I'm going to do a voiceover. His name was
Yukihiko Yaguchi.
Him. And he led the team that developed this car, and it was only about 100 people. Very small production team done as a side project. So this car was built with a lot of passion. And whilst it doesn't necessarily make a car drive any better, that sort of a backstory, I think, gives the car an extra layer of character. And I think the most interesting thing is, whilst it's a tried and tested formula, I mean, big V8 engines in rear-wheel drive sedans isn't a new thing. This car is slightly less conventional. It was predominantly Germans leading the market. This car is a conventional formula in a slightly less conventional brand. And that, I think, makes it different. And I think that's one of the reasons I own one of these.
The ISF is definitely a car that I've thought about quite a lot since filming. I know the AMGs, M3s and RS4s all sound excellent in their own respect, but there is just something about the soundtrack of that Lexus that does set it apart from the rest, in my opinion at least. And with today's era of sports sedans being turbocharged, hybrid and electric, being able to drive an older one with a high-revving, naturally aspirated V8 engine is definitely something quite special and worth celebrating. The next day at my family's Easter lunch, the ISF is a car that I found myself talking about quite a lot for most of the day, and if a car leaves that sort of an impression on you, then I guess it must be pretty good.